This is a new hobby that I've gotten into, but more specifically, FPV RC cars. Let's go. Today, I want to show you this. Let's see if you can see that. There you go. That's an 04 Air Unit, and I've got the antenna and everything. I've got head tracking, and it's pretty cool. This is a Mojave GROM by this company called Arrma. I'm sure if you're watching this, you already know that. The FPV car stuff has been booming, I feel like. And I don't know if it's because drones are getting banned and all this bad stuff's happening, but in terms of the hobby, I feel like a lot of people are going towards RC cars and ground stuff. It's a whole different beast, but I feel like there's so much you can do with RC cars. And basically, I want to start doing RC car content and build content. Today, we're going to talk about this car because I had posted on TikTok. A lot of people were asking about it. It took me a long time to get to this because I posted that video like a year ago. But I still think it's a cool build, and I want to share what I did. The other thing that's really cool about this is I got this device called Sim2RC. You can use a real wheel to connect to this. Additionally, what I've done is I'm using the MT12 4-in-1, which if you're not an RC person, and furthermore RadioMaster ELRS person, you wouldn't know any of this stuff. But anyways, this has a stock receiver that is combined with the ESC. It's a 2-in-1, which means you can't really add another receiver onto this. So I decided I wanted to keep the stock electronics, right? And so I'm using an MT12 form, and let me grab it so I can show you. So this is the MT12. Got a nice little wheel here. We got the ELRS module. And the reason why I have this is because this is the 4-in-1, which means it can connect to all different kinds of protocols. And the Mojave here uses a Spectrum protocol. It uses a Spectrum receiver. And so I'm using this to connect directly to this in its stock form. And then I connect this to the Sim wheel using the Sim2RC. And then this has got FPV, right? So we got all the things. We've got the Sim wheel, we've got FPV, and we got this connected to this. So I can also switch between this and the Sim wheel, which is cool. So I want to go all over that. I might show some old footage, but basically it's so much fun. If you've been into FPV for the past decade or so, and you're just kind of tired of stuff, tired of drones, tired of getting restricted, you don't have anywhere to fly, maybe some ground stuff is where you want to be. And I got a whole ton of cars that I want to put the FPV on. And it is a little bit of a pain, so I'm going to go through that build step by step. I'm not an expert, but I figured it out. And I tried to figure out a really simple way to do it that might help you. So here we go. Okay, so the first thing I want to show you is the 03 Air Unit and the FPV Gimbal setup. Here's the FPV Gimbal with the head tracking unit all hooked up. The setup was a little confusing, so let me know if you would like a detailed video. I certainly need a refresher myself, since there's so many ways to go about this. This setup is with the XF Robot C20T3 Axis Gimbal, which I'm pretty sure is the same as the Caddx GM series. For this build, I'm using a smaller 3S LiPo that I had lying around, hence using the foam to fill in the blank areas. By using a JST pigtail, which is the red connector, I'm powering the entire FPV system directly from the same battery. For more powerful setups, I would recommend powering the FPV separately or using a really good capacitor system and power management to make sure you don't get any voltage spikes to your FPV system.
Welcome to HTX.
Here's the RadioMaster MT12 4-in-1 that is bound using the SLT version 1 4-channel protocol. I found that using heavy duty, locking 3M Velcro is good enough to lock this gimbal into place, and I've got an inline power switch here in the back, so I can turn the gimbal on after I have the shell on. Finding the right 4-in-1 firmware file was actually a bit tricky, so you might need to try it a few times. I found it will only work with the version 1 4-channel protocol. This Edge TX stuff probably deserves its own full-length video to really work through it. Binding is the same as a regular Spectrum process. You probably know this, but the brushless version of this little guy is a beast on 3S. And once you do that, you'll also be able to adjust your gyro strength from one of the auxiliary channels. Okay, final systems check. Looking pretty good. Mojo's been pretty tough. I've driven it through all kinds of terrain already, but on-road driving with these drift wheels is probably my favorite setup. I'll definitely need to do a video just on wheel options. I almost forgot to include an important part of this mod, which is cutting out the driver figure and grinding down the inner supports to make space for the gimbal and wires. The driver area helps to keep the FPV gimbal in place, and having such a tight fit is actually an advantage to larger RCs where there's space for the gimbal to get knocked over. The cables can be tucked in, and you can cut out holes in the rear to stick the antennas through. Although as you can see, taking the body on and off causes wear and tear, so you may want to figure out a way to install the gimbal on the body instead. Okay, next up is probably the most exciting part of this build, connecting the sim wheel. As you can see, I have it connected to my drift car here. Because of the gyro, it's a different experience from driving a real car, but counter steering starts getting really fun as you start to turn down the gyro to a minimum, and you can play with the degrees of rotation to really dial in your driving preference. Here you can see the FPV hooked up to the Cosmostreamer, which definitely does add about 150 milliseconds latency. But for a car going this slow at close range, it really doesn't bother me too much, at least for now. I then took it a step further and decided I wanted to add it to the back seat of my Jeep. So here's a 17-inch monitor hooked up via the DJI Pro, which I found has a little less latency than the Cosmostreamer, and the Logitech G29 hooked up to the RadioMaster MT12 via the Sim2 RC adapter. I'll do a more detailed video just on that also to go over my personal configuration for that as well. One thing that did bother me a little when driving from inside the car is the lack of live audio. I'm planning to hook up a DJI Mic 2 and use some earbuds so I can get some audio feedback. This made me realize how important audio is for the experience. So I'll be exploring hooking up some other cool gadgets. If you're a tall guy, I would definitely recommend just getting a sim rig in, just set it up outside. I'll do another video on this because getting to this configuration was an entire journey, all on its own. Alright, well, thank you for watching. I hope that information dump was helpful. And if you have any questions, you can leave it in the comments and I'll get back to you. Peace.